Today's show is sponsored by City Theater. If you are a birthday person and you love making that whole week, maybe month, maybe season all about celebrating your big day, then the play Birthday Candles might be perfect for you. City Theater is presenting Birthday Candles by Noah Heidel and directed by Mark Masterson, and you can catch the show on the South Side from March 8th through the 30th. Join Ernestine as she takes us through a century of birthdays. The play is inquisitive, it's hilarious, it's heartwarming, and it asks big questions about our place in the universe and what we might do for the perfect gift. You can find out more and buy your tickets at citytheatercompany.org. Today on CityCast Pittsburgh. Spring break season is almost here. I don't know about y'all, but I am dreaming of sitting on a warm beach right now. But wherever you may be headed, we have got some suggestions. Last year, we caught up with a travel expert who's sharing all the ways you can find a cheap flight and get yourself out of town. And if you're looking for plans a little closer to home, stick around after the interview. Executive producer Mallory Falk is bringing in a conversation sponsored by the Pittsburgh Symphony Orchestra, all about their upcoming season here in the Burgh. It's Monday, February 24th. I'm Megan Harris, and here's what Pittsburgh's talking about. I'm with Scott Keys, the founder of Going, aka Scott's Cheap Flights. Welcome to CityCast Pittsburgh.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm curious, Scott, have you ever flown through our own PIT? I'm curious if you have any impressions of the airport.
I have. It's been about a decade since I've flown
well, not much has changed,
Pittsburgh.
So I think that's fine.
I remember it being a warm welcome. I do remember it being a bit outside of town, a bit of a hike to get into the city, but it was great. I love small airports because they're so easy to get through. It's like the amount of time between when you get off your plane and at least out to the curb is that's always something that was really important to me when I'm visiting an airport.
Heard. You are ready for the vacation to get started. Well, if you are flying out of Pittsburgh, maybe the next time you're here, you can expect our airport to look pretty different here pretty soon. We're doing this huge renovation project, and we've been laughing about it here because, God, this project started, I think, months after paying off our last refresh back in the 90s when we were a hub for U.S. Airways. I guess I'm curious if that's typical, airports trying to reimagine themselves every so often like this.
It is. You do see airports, especially, ones that are on the older side, really start to focus on renovations as a way of kind of marketing themselves to the world. And I understand it on one hand. Look, an airport is the first impression of the city for visitors. It's where when you land, get off the plane, this is your first impression of Pittsburgh. And for city officials, for locals, you want it to be a good one. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, ask yourself, when was the last time you visited a city because of its airport?
Oh, never.
Never.
I want to spend the least amount of time possible in any airport. Everywhere. Exactly.
Airports should be there to be as efficient as possible to get out of. And so, look, it's kind of one of those things that's money, it's necessary to spend. But I think there can be a sense of sometimes fooling yourself as a city official and thinking oh, this is going to put us on the map. Oh, this is really going to drive a surge in tourism. People come for the city itself, not for the front door of the city.
Yeah. I mean, something I've heard, at least anecdotally, is that, Pittsburgh could never be a contender for hosting, a lot of big events, like the biggest really, like the Olympics, the Super Bowl, which, as Steelers fans, we all have a lot of big feelings about the Super Bowl. But if we wanted these things, our airport's tiny. It's not very close to our city. There's not really good mass transit to get you to and from it. I'm wondering if that's a conversation you're seeing in other cities, whether their airport setup then influences their ability to bring in a lot of tourists for big stuff.
Here's how I would think about it. I would distinguish between things that are nice to have for big events and things that are must-haves for big events. So things that are nice to have. Yeah, it's great to have an airport that's close to the city, takes less time to get in. It's great to have an airport that has good mass transit connection. But I would say that's a nice to have, especially in the age of Uber, Lyft. It's much more possible for people to get to and from where they're going, even without subways. But some of the must-haves that I think go a long way in preventing it are things like hotel capacity. You just have to have a lot of hotel space when you think of the surge of visitors all at the same time.
And we don't have a ton of that either, although there are folks trying to change it.
Totally. And so this is something that a city like Indianapolis has done quite well, in terms of having the infrastructure in place hotel-wise. I would never in a million years recommend putting a dome, putting a roof over the football stadium. But it is one thing that Lucas Oil Stadium in Indianapolis has that attracts these types of events, that they can be in all weather, that you don't have to worry about a blizzard or a thunderstorm stopping the game the way you do in Pittsburgh, Cincinnati, other cities like that.
Yeah. I mean, I guess by all of these measures, then, are there airports that you find just pleasant to be in? And I wonder also where Pittsburgh might rank on your large list.
Pittsburgh, I think of as sort of in the middle. Look, it's not an airport like Denver that I just dread flying into. And I say that as a former Denver resident.
Well, then you have a bias there, which is good. That's nobody hates on an airport like somebody who lives in the city and has to deal with it.
Right? Exactly. You're the most familiar with it. I don't think we have enough time on this podcast for me to go into the long litany of why I dislike the Denver airport. But so if I put that at the bottom of my list, and at least among like U.S. airports, if I put at the top of the list somewhere like Portland, Oregon, my home airport currently, like one of the just beautiful airport, beautiful setting. You always fly past this one mountain coming in called Mount Hood. That's just gorgeous. You're just, a few miles away. It's a small airport, so you can be able to get to where you're going quickly, but it has good infrastructure, all that type of stuff. Pittsburgh, I think of as kind of halfway in between those. It's not one that I'm like, I'm really excited to get to the airport, but it's not one that I'm dreading the way Denver is.
I mean, if you need a history lesson on an airport that became a farm, we are your go-to spot.
I can't wait to look this up after.
Well, so let's talk about ways to get good deals out of PIT. Of course, we're not the biggest city and our airport is no longer a hub. So I'm curious, like when you buy out of here, when you recommend for folks who are buying out of like a smaller airport like that, how you recommend finding things like discounted tickets and kind of navigating those systems.
Definitely. So I like to think of trips in two different ways. One are the trips where you have a lot of flexibility. Think vacations. You get to choose where you want to take the vacation. Many times you get to choose when you take the vacation if you have that flexible PTO. And then there are other trips where you kind of have to be at a certain place, your sister's wedding, a family reunion, and the strategies for each are going to be different. So for the trips that are like vacations where you've got a lot of flexibility, I think the single best thing you can do to get cheap flights is take the normal way you search for flights and do it exactly in reverse. So the normal way is a 3-step process. Step 1, you decide where you want to go.
Yeah.
Step 2, you decide when you want to go there. And then step 3, you say, well, what do the flights cost? What's it cost to get there? And by setting price as the last priority, it's not surprising we end up with some pretty expensive flights.
Yeah, you really get locked in there.
Exactly. And so instead, what I say is like, look, if cheap flights are a priority, if you want to be able to get great deals, take that same 3-step process and flip it on its head. Step 1, where are there cheap flights currently available out of my home airport? So right now, I checked right before coming on out of Pittsburgh, there are flights to Pittsburgh to London for $471 round trip, flights to Paris for $495 round trip, flights down to Aruba for $276 round trip. These are not on budget airlines. These are full service airlines. And these are deals that are available right now out of Pittsburgh. They might not be available next week because remember, flights are always changing, but those are the ones we're saying, oh, London, Paris, Aruba, these sound great. So step 2, of those options, which one interests you the most? Where would you like to go?
Yeah.
And then step 3, what dates work for my schedule? Oh, I could go the first week of September. That's a great time of year to go. And so by setting prices the top priority rather than the last priority, that's how you end up getting cheap flights and being able to afford 3 or 4 vacations for the same price you used to pay for one.
Today's show is sponsored by the Frick Pittsburgh Museum and Gardens and their newest, still upcoming exhibition. Mark your calendars for artist Kara Walker and her Harper's Pictorial History of the Civil War annotated. If you don't know Walker's work yet, this is a perfect time to acquaint yourself. Her contemporary artworks are on display all over the United States, literally San Francisco to New York, and soon right here in our own backyard. She has won a MacArthur Genius Grant. The Washington Post even called her this generation's Andy Warhol. She really brings the hype. Now, I have only seen pictures of this exhibition, so I'm going to be just like most of y'all, checking this out for the very first time. But we should look forward to big artworks. Walker's bringing 15 large-scale prints where she uses these striking black silhouettes over old Harper's Weekly engravings to depict the racist and violent reality that often gets glossed over in traditional historic narratives. Walker uses silhouettes in so much of her work. She says they really say a lot with very little information, just like a stereotype. The exhibition, Kara Walker, Harper's Pictorial History of the Civil War Annotated, opens soon at the Frick on March 1st. Get tickets and learn more at thefrickpittsburgh.org.
Ready to conquer your next big challenge? Make 2025 your medal year by signing up for the Dick's Sporting Goods Pittsburgh Marathon weekend of events. Happening May 3rd and 4th in Pittsburgh, it's more than a marathon. Choose from a marathon, relay, 5K, and more. And if you prefer walking, join the popular half-marathon walking division. The Pittsburgh Marathon isn't just about running. It's about community, celebration, and pushing yourself to new limits. Over 300,000 fans will be cheering you on through the streets of the Steel City. And the hardest step is the first one, signing up. A registration today is a commitment to your future self. Join the excitement by visiting thepittsburghmarathon.com. Use CityCast15 to save 15% off any event registration. That's thepittsburghmarathon.com. And again, use that code, CityCast15, for 15% off any event.
How fussy do you think people should be about things like direct flights and choosing your seat and things like that?
I think everybody should do the thing that they want to do. They just need to be aware of what the trade-offs are. Typically, but not always, a more convenient flight, like a direct flight, you're going to have to pay a premium for. Not always. And remember, airfare is extremely volatile. Today's cheap flight might be tomorrow's expensive flight and vice versa. But just being aware that, look, if I want to fly to London, that $471 flight includes a connection. If I want to fly there nonstop, as there is, a new nonstop flight from Pittsburgh to London, that price is more going to be like $800 or $900.
It's so much more expensive.
Exactly. If you're willing to pay $400, $500, $600 extra dollars for a nonstop, by all means, go for it. And I think that's going to change in your kind of stage of life. In my 20s, early 30s, before I had kids, I would take whatever.
I would take 4 layovers, didn't care, waste my time.
I once flew from DC to Denver with 7 connections in order to get the best deal possible. It was embarrassing. Today, I could not, you could not pay me enough money to do that. So I think it's okay for your preferences to change, but I like just to be aware that, look, I'm paying extra for the convenience.
Yeah. Do you think that it's better to be loyal to, say, like an airline, or like try to find, city destinations maybe that have good relationships with your airport? Is that even a thing?
Unless your company is buying your flights, in which case, by all means, do
get whatever you want
to be loyal and get those benefits. The better strategy for most people is to be loyal to yourself. And what I mean by that is like, look, being loyal, everybody talks about loyalty as though it's
Yeah, they're
this
all
thing
called
that you
loyalty
can,
programs.
right, that you thing you can do that's like costless. But what it actually means is to be loyal to one airline means being willing to pay more to fly that airline than some other airline that might have a cheaper flight. You know, look, why do I want to pay $100 extra to fly economy American versus economy in United? They're basically the exact same experience. So I'd rather save that money, spread out my loyalty, and you know, also be able to take advantage of perks that exist by, you know, the airline credit cards, for instance. I think that's a better strategy for most people.
Well, I was going to ask, does your opinion on this extend to the credit cards, or do you think the credit cards are more worth it?
I think the credit card game is extremely lucrative if you can play it well and responsibly. And so what I mean by that is I'm somebody who loves frequent flyer miles, hotel points, bank points, all that. But there are a couple ironclad rules to be aware of. And remembering that first and foremost, the airlines make it difficult and confusing because they benefit from that difficulty and confusion. So you need to know that, you know, for a credit card, for instance, don't never spend more money than you have. Treat it like a debit card. Just spend the money that you actually do have in your bank account.
Which is good advice for any credit card for any reason.
Absolutely. Pay off your balance in full every single month. Do not pay interest charges. All those types of things. If you're not willing or capable or organized enough to do that, then the credit card game is probably not for you, because any benefits you might get are going to be eaten up and then some by the late fees, interest fees, things like that. So if you're organized and can do it well, it's really, really beneficial. If you've got a lot going on, if it's not your type of speed to really kind of stay on top of these things, there are plenty of other areas in travel that are less risky than credit cards.
Such as, what do you recommend these days?
You know, I could go give dozens and dozens of tips, but I'll give you one great tip for those inflexible trips. The most important thing is to get the timing of your booking right.
Yeah. Is there a best day to book a flight or to check, or like I've heard this thing that you're not supposed to like search for a flight too much because that can mess with the algorithm. Is any of that stuff true?
It is not. It is not true. And I think those sorts of tales exist because of the inherent volatility and confusion of flights. Because it's the most confusing thing we purchase, we almost treat it like a modern day rain dance where we're like, oh, if I just stop searching on, you know, at this time, or if I search at this time, then it'll definitely be cheaper. It doesn't work that way. Airfare is extraordinarily volatile, but there is something you can do. So you don't have to worry about Tuesday at 1 p.m. That is a myth. It used to be true 25 years ago when airlines first started selling tickets online.
Yeah.
Today, the airfare is changing by the day, by the hour. It is not something that's loaded once a week, Tuesday at 1 p.m. Instead, what's important is to get the timing of your booking right. And the best way to do that is to think what I call Goldilocks windows. Not too early, not too late, just right in the middle. So let's say you're traveling domestically. You're taking a domestic flight. The Goldilocks window for when cheap flights are most likely to pop up for off-peak travel, for, you know, not in the summer, Christmas, New Year, it's about 1 to 3 months ahead of time. For peak travel dates, more like 3 to 6 months ahead of time. That's when the odds are at their best of a cheap flight popping up. Any closer to travel dates, then you're getting into last minute, and airfare tends to get really expensive. But what a lot of folks miss is, you know, you think of, oh, it's cheaper to book early. You can actually book too early. You know, the early bird gets the worm, but the earliest bird does not get the worm. In this case, you want to wait till those Goldilocks windows, typically when your odds are at their highest.
Is there a best or cheapest day to do your flight, like to get on the plane?
I'm so glad you asked, because that's a really important like disambiguation here. So while there's no cheapest day to book your flight, there are cheapest days to take your flights. And those typically are Tuesdays and Wednesdays.
Oh.
Sometimes it's Saturdays. This is actually something that's changed a little bit since Indeed. Yeah. So pre-pandemic, Saturday was one of the cheapest days to fly. The reason why Tuesday and Wednesday and previously Saturday were cheapest days to fly is because business travelers did not want to fly on those days.
Oh,
business travelers like to fly Monday, Friday, Sunday. And so if it's a business travel day, airlines usually have the prices higher because they want to try to gouge those business travelers for anything they'll pay. But for the off-peak days, Tuesday, Wednesday, they say, well, look, there are fewer people traveling, less demand will lower prices. Saturday's one that used to be cheaper. Now it's because business travel is still down, but leisure travel is way, way up. It is less so. So Tuesdays and Wednesdays are still reliably the cheapest days of the week to actually fly.
Yeah. I mean, do you personally have any favorite or least favorite airlines to fly? I realize that's subjective to your city, but
I would love to give you a hot take on my favorite airline, my least favorite airline. But my actual hot take is that flying in economy on domestic flights in the US is basically the exact same experience on every single airline. You see a lot of differentiation when it comes to if you're flying up in business class, or if you're flying on these long haul international flights, especially some of the Middle Eastern or Asian airlines have some really swankier aircraft and service on board. But frankly, economy in Delta, economy in American, economy in United, even economy in something like Spirit, Southwest, not all that different. It's all pretty similar. So to me, it's just whatever flight is most convenient. I care more about nonstop now than I used to, but it's mostly just convenience. And then I want to get a cheap flight. I'm a cheap flight guy. I've kind of built that about myself, and then it would personally hurt my soul, even if nobody knows about it, to overpay for a flight. So that's what's important to me, staying loyal to cheap flights.
I don't think you're at risk for overpaying for a flight. If anyone in the U.S. has a chance, I think it's you and your family.
Oh my gosh. I have done it before. I remember, still to this day, I remember paying over $1,000 once to fly down to South America, and it haunts me. I still feel like, gosh, I could have done so much better on that one. So it's good to have something that's still kind of motivating you and driving you.
Well, Scott, I hope you consider Pittsburgh on your upcoming travel. We have a lot of fun things to offer, and I promise you the CityCast team would show you a good time.
Oh, absolutely. One of my favorite, I used to live in Washington, D.C., and one of my favorite memories was riding on the Great Allegheny Passage from D.C. to Pittsburgh. I've been meaning to get back and do it in reverse.
Yeah, come anytime. We got you. Scott Keyes is the founder of Going. He's from Ohio, but we won't hold that against him. Scott, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
And don't go anywhere. In just a second, we have got a segment sponsored by the Pittsburgh Symphony Orchestra. Executive producer Mallory Falk is chatting with Erin Lynn, the director of audience experience, all about their upcoming season. Think dress casual vibes.
Hey, I'm CityCast Pittsburgh executive producer Mallory Falk, here with Erin Lynn, who's the director of audience experience at the Pittsburgh Symphony Orchestra. She's here to talk to us about their Disrupt concerts. Welcome, Erin.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Excited to have you here. I know that you have been with the Pittsburgh Symphony Orchestra for 18 years. How have the shows and the way the audience experienced those shows changed over the time you've been there?
Yeah, the experience has changed where the audience wants more than just a concert. They want talking from stage, if it's the conductor, if it's a musician, if it's an artist, if it's a composer that is coming in that we're playing one of their pieces. They also just want kind of more in the theater, if it's information on screens or videos or different lighting or even a discussion from the stage. That has been the biggest change over the 18 years is audiences now definitely want more than just a concert when they come to a performance.
So you've got these 60-minute long Disrupt concerts. What can guests expect not only during those shows, but also before and after?
So we try to make sure that when people walk in the building, that there's an atmosphere that they're walking into before they actually go into the theater for the concert. So we have food and beverage that's on theme with whatever the concert is going to be a part of. We have some activities that are usually interactive or some are passive. There can be photo booths or there can be, musician Q&As, just anything that connects our audience more to the organization and the concert before they actually go into the theater for that actual 60-minute concert.
What's an example of a themed drink related to a concert?
One of our concerts, it was an American in Paris, and we had French 75s. Anything that we can make people feel like special, exclusive feeling for being able to have a drink that's related to the concert that they're going to see. We've done dark and stormies when we've had kind of dramatic performances, which we actually might bring that back for a future one.
I love that. And I know that Come As You Are is a big part of these concerts. How does that mindset just change the overall experience for guests?
Yeah, we have learned that the symphony as an industry, it has a stereotype of always being very formal. And with these concerts, we really wanted to break down that barrier to be able to say, yes, the symphony, isn't everything to everyone, but we have something for everyone, so that when a guest walks in and knows that they can take their drink into the theater during the concert, that they're going to be addressed from stage, not in like an academic way, but in a conversational way to really give insights into what the music was about. Because realistically, I've said this to students in the past, all of these composers and these pieces, they were like the rock stars or the Beyoncés like of the era that they were being composed and performed during. So to give people that Come As You Are open door option, that they don't have to feel that they don't belong, it's incredible to see people when they walk in and realize, oh, I do belong here. I can be a part of this community and feel comfortable.
For you, as someone who has been part of this for a while now, what is your personal favorite part of attending a concert at the Pittsburgh Symphony Orchestra?
My favorite part is actually being able to be in our lobbies, seeing the guests and audience members come in with either a preconceived notion of what they're going to experience or no preconceived notion. Both are incredible to witness. And then following people as they're coming out and hearing what they say. Like, is there a difference? Can I tell that we made some sort of impact on them? That's my favorite part. I mean, aside from the music, but...
You've got a couple of great Disrupt shows coming up here. First up is Prokofiev's Hope and Resistance on March 8th. Can you give us a quick rundown of the show?
Sure. So when the doors open, it's an hour before the concert starts, and there will be drinks and fun activities and our musicians and just a complete kind of social hour before the concert actually starts. So people can become familiar with the building if they're not used to coming in there, and just to feel a part of that sense of community. Then they'll go into the theater for that 60-minute concert, and a host will guide the audience through Prokofiev's masterpiece, Fifth Symphony. And that'll include special lighting. There'll be visuals displayed on our screens, conversations from stage. And then after, there's the invitation that if people want to stay, there'll be a Q&A from the stage with the artists, or everyone can just come out into the lobbies and just relax and order another cocktail or mocktail and maybe some desserts and just chat with everyone else who just experienced that same piece of music that you just did.
So it can really be a full communal experience.
Yes, it's a full night. We have it all planned out before, during, and after. We have something ready for you.
And you also have Love Struck featuring Ravel on April 10th. This is another Disrupt show. What can you share about it?
Yeah, absolutely. We're excited about this one because it really is diving into the greatest love story ever told. So that theme is going to be throughout the concert portion, throughout hosts' remarks, throughout the food and beverage, throughout all of the front of house spaces with selfie stations and just activities. We really are just super excited about telling the story of the greatest love story ever told.
Erin, thank you again for joining us. This all sounds so fantastic.
Thanks for having me.
Again, check out pittsburghsymphony.org/disrupt to learn more. We will include that link in our show notes so that you are just a click away.
That's all for today here on CityCast Pittsburgh. We will be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. Talk to you soon. Cheap flights, you got covered, but do you have any suggestions for cheap hotels? Because sometimes that is almost worse.
Definitely. So the biggest thing that you can do for hotels is most people, when they book a hotel, they book it and then they don't think about it again until the actual day comes to check in. And that's bad practice. Best practice instead, book that hotel and then set yourself a little calendar reminder, maybe like every Monday morning, to check the price of that hotel for your travel dates. Because if the price went down, hotels are not something that you prepay for. 99 times out of 100, you reserve it, but there's like free cancellation. And so you can just cancel your old reservation. Let's say you booked it at $300 a night. You cancel your old reservation because now it's down to $250. You rebook it at $250. You just saved yourself $50 a night. So we call it gardening your reservation, checking it for weeds, seeing if it's gotten any better. That's the best thing you can do for hotels. And frankly, for car rentals, especially car rentals, the price is changing a lot. And so taking advantage of any price drops. And the great thing is, look, you book it at $300. If that price goes up to $350, doesn't matter. You already got it at $300. If it goes down to $250, awesome. You rebook it, you pocket the difference. So it's a real kind of heads you win, tails they lose situation.